Sunsets. Who doesn't like a great sunset? I mean, anytime you're somewhere tropical and you get to see those incredible sunsets where it looks like the sun is falling off the edge of a table, it is such an incredible phenomenon. We know that they are awe-inspiring, but how did we associate that? What could the science tell us about how that works and what difference they really make? And does it matter whether the sunset is actually real? Does it have to be right in front of us, or can we watch a picture of one? Are there ways of replicating it? So we went to find out. Alex Smalley is a PhD fellow at the University of Exeter, who was one of those who did this research, and he joins us now. Alex, thanks for your time tonight.
Great to be here.
So this is as always, we sort of comb around for really interesting work that's being done scientifically. How did you come across this idea? What were you looking for?
Well, there's such a robust body of work that shows that spending time in natural environments can be good for our physical, but also our psychological health. And we call this area of this field of research environmental psychology. And it's told us a huge amount about how people respond to, say, blue spaces, aquatic environments. It's told us a lot about green spaces, about the way that people respond to different, say, tree-lined streets and different elements of our environments like that. But what it didn't tell us very much about was how these sort of fleeting and what we call ephemeral experiences in nature, how they can impact people's emotional outcomes when they spend time in natural environments.
Yeah, I was thinking about that while reading through the work that you'd done, because, for instance, here where I am, sometimes if you're running through the park, you'll spot an eagle or an owl. And those are those ephemeral fleeting moments where you think it's extra special that day, right? But you've looked at a few more common ones that we tend to see more regularly. What did you discover?
So you're exactly right. And actually, there's a decent body of work that shows how people respond to wildlife, to biodiversity. But we were chiefly interested in rhythmic, diurnal changes, the kind of changes that happen every day, or actually maybe not every day. So we looked at elements like sunrise, sunset, nightfall. We looked at the ways that stormy skies and rainbows can impact the way that people perceive not just natural environments, but urban environments too. And we looked at three key metrics. We were really interested in people's appraisals of aesthetics, so beauty. We were also really interested in how they experience feelings of awe, which we think is a really important emotion. And we also tried to capture how much people valued those fleeting, ephemeral phenomena.
And you came up with some interesting, perhaps not surprising findings. If you've ever been anywhere where, like a Santorini, for instance, where the sunsets are reputed to be beautiful, and you see hundreds of people piling into one area to watch the sun go down, you understand why this is. But sunsets finished sort of top of them all, did they not?
That's right. So like you say, anecdotally, I think we're all familiar with that urge to take of an incredible sunset, which is often the one we get, right? Not everyone's up for sunrise. But we were trying to understand a bit more about what's going on there, yeah. And so what we found was that sunrise and sunset emerged as these particularly beautiful times of day to experience both urban and natural landscapes, but that those increases in beauty were also associated with these bumps in awe. And we think awe could be really important because it can help to diminish people's feelings of self-importance, which means that we call this the small self, which means that also their problems can feel diminished. They're more likely to adopt pro-social behavior. And we think these could be really important outcomes from spending time in natural environments. But what was really excited us was that we saw exactly the same patterns in urban environments. And of course, we often associate urban environments, the city, as places, well, one of the phrases that's used is of disvalue, that people tend to value natural environments and not so much their urban fabric. And actually, we found that elements like sunrise, sunset, rainbows could actually have this really important effect there too.
And that's fascinating because I think we often associate seeing beautiful sunsets with being in more pastoral environments, or sunrises for that matter. And yet what you're saying is that if you step out on your balcony in the middle of downtown, just about anywhere, and watch the sunset, it in some ways can be as validating or as awesome as it is watching it somewhere more remote.
You're exactly right. And one of the reasons we were really interested in sort of trying to attach a very rudimentary and ballpark figure to how much that was worth to people was because in cities particularly, we can help to inform planning decisions if we can put a value to these things. We can help perhaps to protect those views. We can also encourage residents of towns and cities to seek out those experiences, which might mean just changing your daily routine a little bit. It might be highlighting places where people are more likely to see a sunrise or a sunset if and when they occur, maybe highlighting when they're particularly vibrant. But of course, that's the fantastic thing about these events, is that they're free to everyone. And whilst they don't occur every day, they're pretty common.
Yeah, I mean, just this week, there's been a huge Northern Lights activity in and around far further south than we're used to in Canada, and the amount of pictures being shared of it. And this is just another awesome phenomenon, rarer for many than because of light pollution and so on, than something as common as a sunrise, but still a reminder of that small self, which is what you've pointed out to, this idea that we are a small part of a much bigger picture, and just how mind altering that can be.
Absolutely. And actually, I kicked myself because we had exactly this, the same ability to see the aurora in the southern UK where I'm based, which is incredibly rare. And yes. I missed it because that part of solar activity wasn't highlighted. And I think you're exactly right that those kind of, the aurora is almost that archetypal ephemeral phenomena. It's incredibly rare. You have to have such a specific set of circumstances to view it. But, what we're tapping into here, of course, isn't entirely new. The sublime movement of art captured these sort of awe-inspiring moments. And it's only really now that I think we're starting to be able to ascribe really demonstrable value to them in a way that can allow us to appreciate them and, of course, preserve and protect them.
Right. And the idea of urban planning being built around our ability to still witness some of these things is a really interesting way of looking at it as well. You did some more looks into sort of sunrises and sunsets and ideal times to see them as well. Is that right?
Seeing sunrise and sunset, and we can focus on those elements because they were the standouts in our study, but they vary through the year. So I think one of the other things that we are really interested with the outcomes of this study is the way that, particularly say in urban centres where people are disconnected from natural environments, they're disconnected from the rhythm of nature, the seasonality of nature, paying attention to even just simple things like sunrise and sunset. If you live next to the coast, to the rise and fall of the tide, the changing of tide times, the lunar cycle can actually help to connect us to a natural environment in a way that doesn't rely on the kind of structural factors that we might rely on when we talk about or think about, say, things like urban greening, which relies on us to plant trees, to preserve park environments, which are all of course, really important initiatives. But this is almost, paying attention to, say, the solar cycle or understanding that after a particularly vibrant storm, there might be a chance to see a rainbow. They're really quick wins.
Right. Take advantage of those opportunities. There were some, lots of people missed. I was speaking to someone the other day in Madison, Wisconsin, who slept through it because he thought it would be cloudy. So don't be too hard on yourself. I think a lot of people missed the aurora, but it was, there were sort of the odd alert out there talking about increased solar activity and so on. One of the things about your study I found really surprising was that you don't even actually necessarily need to see a sunrise or a sunset or the phenomenon physically. Sometimes just seeing it on a screen can be enough to lift your mood.
And that's a really core part of the research that we're doing, is looking at the way that people respond to virtual representations of nature. And the really familiar way that people do that without perhaps even realizing is sitting down to watch natural history documentaries. Here in the UK, we have the BBC's Planet Earth and Blue Planet series, and they bring nature to people at home. And so we're really interested in how we might be able to harness some of the benefits of that for people who can't otherwise get outside, whether they're in clinical settings, whether they're in residential care, because of course not everyone, and I think we all experienced this throughout the pandemic, not everyone has access to natural environments and the kind of wonder that they can instill on a regular basis and when they might need them the most. And actually the way that we conducted this study was through digital means, with these very carefully calibrated images that we showed to 2,500 participants. And that also gives us great confidence in our findings too.
Any advice? I mean, I know this isn't supposed to be advice per se, but any advice to those out there about what your findings have taught all the rest of us about what we should be doing? I mean, stop and smell the flowers is one of the oldest terms, right? But it strikes me in looking at your research, that's precisely what you're asking people to do to some extent.
Absolutely, paying attention, being quite intentional about your time outdoors, whether that's in urban or natural environments, I think is really important. And paying attention to all of the senses. In this study, we very much focus on the ephemerality of nature-based experiences. But of course, that's not restricted to the visual sense. That very much applies to the way that we sense the world through other ways. And we focused a little bit as well on the way that people respond to natural soundscapes and bird song. And of course, by their definition, they're fleeting, they're ever changing, they're dynamic. And just being able to tune in, I think, can really help us switch off.
When you finish, I don't imagine you weren't already a fan of the outdoors, but when you finished this, have you looked at different ephemeral phenomenon in a new way?
Yeah, I have. It's funny actually, the ability to try and stop and to practice what you preach. I'm still completely arrested by a really vibrant sunset, but also for me the sort of the awe and the drama of thunderstorms, particularly the sonic element of thunderstorms, gets me every time.
Yeah, that rumble, right? That rumble that happens. Alex Smalley, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.